For centuries, black women have been subjected to a relentless barrage of dehumanizing stereotypes. From movies and TV shows to music videos and theater, portrayals of black women often fall into one of three main categories: the Jezebel, the Sapphire, and the Mammy. These distorted images have shaped public perception, limiting opportunities and inflicting immeasurable harm. Now, according to Bell Hooks, a black feminist scholar in 1992, we should take an oppositional gaze toward these images of black women. This means critically analyzing, challenging, and dismantling these portrayals to ensure they reflect more positive and accurate representations. And that is exactly what we will do in this video. We'll discuss why the Mammy, Jezebel, and Sapphire images were created, why they persist, and how they have evolved.
Oh, you looking for a sassy black friend?
By doing so, we can better understand their impact on black women today and strive to create more genuine and empowering portrayals. Give this video a like to show your support, subscribe for similarly thought-provoking content, and let's begin. Our first character is the Jezebel. The name is derived from a biblical figure named Jezebel, the wife of King Ahab of Israel. She is portrayed as a wicked and manipulative woman who led the kingdom astray through her worship of Baal. Her actions are depicted negatively, and she is often seen as a symbol of evil and sexual immorality. Now, how and why was this stereotype imposed on black women, you might wonder? In 1619, the first ship carrying enslaved Africans docked in Jamestown, Virginia. Upon their arrival, the women were put on the auction block, stripped naked, and inspected to assess their reproductive potential. Once sold, they were subjected to coercion, manipulation, seduction, and most brutally, violent forced sexual relations with slaveholders, their family members, and overseers. Unfortunately, sexual violence did not cease with the end of slavery. During nighttime raids, vigilante groups like the Ku Klux Klan whipped African Americans, vandalized their property, and brutally abused black women. The Jezebel stereotype, which depicted black women as sexually promiscuous and immoral, was employed to justify these horrific abuses. With both the notion that black women are inherently sex-crazed beings and the view of black people as property, white men have used slavery and its aftermath to foster a culture that aggressively sexualizes black women. In other words, the Jezebel is a stereotype that slanders the sexuality of black women. It gives the impression that black women could not be sexual abuse victims because they always desired sex. Consequently, perpetrators faced few legal or social sanctions for abusing black women. One of the most notorious examples of this exploitation is Sarah Baartman. Enslaved in South Africa, Sarah was brought to Europe in the early 1800s and put on display in London for the voyeuristic pleasure of white Europeans. They ogled her physical features and could even pay extra to examine her genitals. Her nickname, Hottentot Venus, highlights the connection between her body as a black woman and the notions of sexuality and fertility. Hottentot was a derogatory term for the Khoi people of South Africa, while Venus referenced the Roman goddess of love and fertility. Sarah was objectified and dehumanized by a white society that viewed her as less than human. This exploitation mirrored the treatment of black women in the United States, where many enslaved black women faced sexual abuse at the hands of white slave owners. Contemporary Jezebels, often labeled as hoochies, freaks, hood rats, or chicken heads, are commonly seen gyrating in hip-hop music videos. Their barely clothed bodies are frequently draped over luxury cars or groped by male rappers. In some hardcore gangster rap, these women are subjected to lyrical abuse, mutilation, and murder. Off camera, the life of a video vixen is far from glamorous. The traits associated with the Jezebel stereotype can also be unfairly projected onto black women, regardless of their actual behavior. For instance, when shown sexually provocative videos followed by images of unknown, well-dressed women, white undergraduates were more likely to label the black women in these photos as indecent, promiscuous, sleazy, and sluttish. Researchers Gann, Zillman, and Mitruk in 1997 concluded that the traits and behavior attributed to a small group of black female rappers were unfairly generalized to all black women, while similar generalizations were not made about other groups, such as white women. The Jezebel stereotype can also affect how we view abuse survivors. In a scenario where a man intoxicates and abuses a black woman, college students were less likely to recognize the incident as abuse, think it should be reported to the police, or hold the assailant accountable when the victim was black, according to research by Foley, Evanek, Carnick, King, and Parks in 1995. According to the researchers, racial history and myths on sexual abuse thus make African American women more vulnerable to forced sexual encounters, while simultaneously making accusations of sexual abuse more difficult for them. As a result, black women may face a double dose of cultural myths about sexual abuse, those that apply to all survivors, as well as those that suggest black women are particularly deserving of sexual abuse. In a study by Neville Hepner, O. Spanierman, and Clark in 2004, black survivors of sexual abuse who internalize beliefs consistent with the Jezebel stereotype, such as the notion that people think black women are sexually loose, reported higher levels of victim blaming. This, in turn, was associated with lower self-esteem. However, acknowledgement of the influence of this image on the mental health of African American survivors may increase their willingness to disclose abuse and seek assistance. So, how do contemporary black women cultivate a healthy sexuality in a society that portrays them as over-sexualized and invulnerable to abuse, an image perpetuated globally through constant music videos? Some artists have developed alternative beauty standards and empowered sexuality to counteract negative stereotypes. Others have sought to reclaim and revise controlling images, such as the Jezebel, by portraying black women's sexuality as positive and pleasurable, as seen in songs like Salt and Pepper's Let's Talk About Sex. The challenge, however, is distinguishing between portrayals of black women as sexually liberated and those as mere sex objects. Are rappers such as Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion victims of the music industry, modern iterations of the Jezebel stereotype, or astute businesswomen who strategically use their sexuality for personal success?
And I guess you think you could cook, clean.
Our second character is the Sapphire, a stereotype that places blame on black women. The Sapphire is depicted as a masculine, angry, and overbearing figure, especially towards her husband. This portrayal has been used to justify the perceived breakdown of black families. Just as the Jezebel stereotype slanders the sexuality of black women, so the Sapphire stereotype slanders their temperament and character. The Sapphire, characterized by her domineering and aggressive behavior towards her husband and others, can be seen as a direct result of the Jezebel stereotype. A woman embodying the Jezebel traits is likely to have children and may not have a supportive partner, which can lead her to adopt the aggressive, Sapphire-like role as a mother. During slavery, the ideal of true womanhood demanded that upper-middle-class white women conform to standards of passivity, frailty, and domesticity. In stark contrast, these standards were not applied to black women. Instead, they were often depicted as strong, masculinized laborers working alongside black men in the fields, or as aggressive figures who drove away their families with their overbearing behavior. In reality, slaveholders frequently sold black women's children and husbands, causing immense grief and understandable anger. Additionally, the absence of their partners forced African American women to take on traditional male roles, such as financial providers. Despite this, social scientists attributed the unemployment and perceived emasculation of black men to black women's dominance and matriarchal status within their families, rather than to discriminatory social policies and economic inequalities. This narrative contributed to the stereotype that black women's roles led to poverty, single parenthood, and the development of criminally inclined, academically underachieving black children. The image of this hostile, nagging black female was derived from the character Sapphire on the 1940s and 1950s radio and television show Amos and Andy.
George Stevens, don't you dare talk that way. This is my house and I got my rights in here.
Despite being removed from the airwaves in 1953 due to public outcry, this stereotype persists in modern media, seen in characters like Omarosa on Donald Trump's The Apprentice and other reality shows and recent films. Popularized through hip-hop music and urban fiction, the Sapphire stereotype has evolved into the gangsta girl who is just as violent as her male counterparts. This image is also embodied in Tyler Perry's character Medea, a gun-toting grandmother known for her dramatic gestures, such as rolling her neck and placing her hands on her hips while confronting those who offend her. The Sapphire stereotype frames black women's anger, a legitimate reaction to societal injustice, as either threatening or comical. This portrayal affects how anger is expressed and perceived. While some Black women may view this image as empowering, they might also adopt an angry, self-protective demeanor as a defense against discrimination, victimization, and disappointment. Anger can become problematic when it escalates to what Childs and Palmer in 2001 describe as the Sapphire level. This involves taking an argument to extremes, losing perspective, becoming verbally or physically abusive, throwing objects, and using underhanded tactics. When African American women react with intense anger, they may inadvertently alienate their support network and lose emotional backing. Conversely, some may avoid expressing anger to prevent reinforcing the Sapphire stereotype, thereby suppressing legitimate feelings. But what can be done to address this situation? Well, first, there is a need to move away from trivializing or humorous portrayals of Black women's anger. Instead, more research should focus on the real-life experiences of Black women, whose anger is often driven by racism and a lack of power, control, and respect. Assertiveness training can also assist African American women in finding constructive ways to manage their anger, using it as a catalyst for change. For instance, after seeing rapper Nelly use a credit card on the buttocks of a young Black woman, students at Spelman College, a historically Black women's institution in Atlanta, launched a Take Back the Music protest against offensive song lyrics and videos. These activists organized community forums, wrote articles, and lobbied the music industry to alter these portrayals.
Yes, Lord.
Finally, our third character is the Mammy. The term Mammy, originating in the South after slavery, represents one of the most enduring stereotypes of Black women. Typically depicted as dark-skinned and overweight, with large breasts, this image often features her wearing a headscarf to conceal her naturally kinky hair, which was considered ugly by white standards. Tied to her physical characteristics are her personality traits. She is strong, for she certainly has enough girth, but this strength is used in the service to her white master and as a way of keeping her male counterparts in check. She is kind and loyal, for she is a mother. She is sexless. This character is presented as a nurturing mother figure with little depth past being the help. The Mammy is mainly depicted as devoted to caring for white children, selflessly loving the family she serves while inevitably neglecting her own. Her selflessness toward those who are not her kin is portrayed as a virtue. Basically, she is a surrogate mother to the white children of the house. However, one must note that a Mammy is not quite a mother. In a fantasy context, she may be perceived as a mother, transcending racial boundaries. However, in cultural representation, she remains distinct from an actual mother, with racial distinctions firmly in place. In other words, a Mammy can never fully be a mother because her so-called children will ultimately have authority over her due to their white privilege, while she remains Black. Although the Mammy may discipline and assert authority over the children, even as they grow up, she lacks the comprehensive disciplinary and psychological influence that a true mother holds over her children. Her influence will always be limited by her subordinate status. Despite this, she is content with the system. But the reality is, there is little historic evidence to support the existence of a subordinate, nurturing, self-sacrificing Mammy figure. Enslaved women often face severe abuse, including beatings, excessive labor, and sexual exploitation. In response, they would escape, assist others in fleeing, resist punishment, or even poison their oppressors. To cope with this harsh reality, historians and writers altered the narrative to present the image of the loyal, content Mammy. The portrayal of Mammy in Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind, for instance, served to suggest that slavery was a humane institution by implying that Mammy was satisfied with her life. Despite attempts to retire the Mammy stereotype, it persists in contemporary culture. For example, Aunt Jemima, who has been featured on breakfast products for over a century, exemplifies this image. Even after the Quaker Oats Company updated her appearance in the 1990s by removing her trademark red bandana and eliminating her slave dialect, the Mammy stereotype remained prevalent. Similarly, the Pine Sol Lady, a dark-skinned, slightly overweight, motherly figure who cheerfully promoted the product with the phrase, "Honey, it's rain-clean Pine Sol," reflects this enduring stereotype. Now, we don't want to imply that caretaking, nurturing, and serving others are inherently negative traits. In fact, these qualities have been vital to the survival and well-being of the African American community. Nor do we mean to suggest that role strain is unique to Black women. Women of all ethnicities often face the challenge of balancing the roles of mother, worker, and intimate partner. However, Black women on average earn less, have lower educational and job status, and are more likely to be single parents compared to their white counterparts. Consequently, they often juggle multiple roles without economic stability or support from a partner. The Mammy stereotype exacerbates this role strain by perpetuating the belief that Black women willingly embrace multiple roles rather than being compelled to do so out of necessity. It suggests that they effortlessly manage their responsibilities and have no need to share or delegate tasks. This extreme caretaking, often referred to as Mammyism, reinforces these misconceptions. Hip-hop feminist Joan Morgan coined the term strong Black woman to encapsulate this image. This spelling suggests that the traits of being strong, Black, and female are interwoven into a seemingly unified identity. Both aspects involve a woman's personal sacrifice within her family, community, or workplace, often at the cost of her own mental and physical well-being. While it may be detrimental or emotionally unhealthy to completely forgo vital roles like nurturer, mother, partner, or activist, endlessly working, loving, volunteering, organizing, protecting, and saving others while neglecting one's own needs can also be harmful. So what are the solutions to addressing the role strain experienced by Black women? On a societal level, there is a need to tackle the economic and social inequalities that make Black women more susceptible to role strain. This involves challenging policies and attitudes that assume Black women do not need community or government support, such as social services, child support, and daycare. On an individual level, Black women should focus on self-care as much as they care for others, establish clear boundaries, and learn to say no to unreasonable demands. They should also seek and accept social support, allowing themselves to shift from the expectation of being superhuman to embracing their own humanity. This shift can help them express and address the doubts, fears, depression, and frustration that come with their struggles. Now recall that Mammy was depicted as a large, dark-complexioned Black woman with a bandana. This portrayal reinforced a beauty standard that favored white or lighter skin, straight, preferably blonde, hair, and thinness. The characterization of Black women as unattractive mammies helped to justify and obscure the reality of sexual abuse in plantation households. Despite this, sexual abuse and miscegenation were prevalent in the antebellum South, leading to a variety of skin colors and hair textures among African Americans. Slaveholders used these physical attributes to establish a hierarchy of beauty and social status among the enslaved. Those with more African features were deemed less attractive and intelligent, and were thus relegated to field labor. Conversely, individuals with lighter skin and straighter hair, often the children of white slave owners, were sometimes given more education, lighter duties, and better living conditions. These disparities persisted even after emancipation. In the early 1900s, reflecting the broader societal color discrimination, some Black communities used European physical features to determine membership in schools, churches, and social organizations. For instance, some exclusive clubs favored African Americans with lighter skin, sometimes measured against a paper bag. Although the Black is Beautiful movement of the 1960s and early 1970s celebrated African physical features, including natural hairstyles and dark skin, colorism, discriminatory practices that prioritize lighter skin over darker skin continues to persist. While many Black women feel confident about their complexion and appearance, especially with strong racial identities and family support, some still experience feelings of shame and unattractiveness. These emotional struggles and life limitations often start early, but become more significant in adulthood. Darker-skinned African American women often face lower salaries, less education, and a higher likelihood of marrying less educated partners compared to their lighter-skinned counterparts. Even among educated and financially successful darker-skinned Black women, self-esteem is typically lower compared to lighter-skinned peers. Those who resemble the Mammy stereotype, often facing economic hardships, are particularly vulnerable to low self-esteem. To enhance their economic and social prospects, some Black women use skin lighteners and hair relaxers, but these products can lead to adverse effects like severe acne, skin discoloration, and hair breakage when not used properly. Given the ongoing issues around appearance, it may be time for African American women to start their own Black beauty liberation movement to address the pain, shame, and competition associated with these aspects. Changing our language can be a start. For instance, we should challenge the notion of labeling wavy or straight hair as good and curly or kinky hair as bad. Additionally, the media should better represent the diversity of Black beauty by valuing dark skin and kinky hair, which are often associated with the Mammy stereotype, just as much as lighter skin and straight hair. By expanding our definition of beauty, African American women can redefine their attributes not by eye color or hair type, but by qualities like pride, intelligence, perseverance, and solidarity. Despite higher rates of obesity, Black women often report more positive body images than their white counterparts. Many young Black women embrace their curves and take pride in being described as thick, healthy, or fat. Acceptance of larger body sizes in the Black community and rejection of restrictive white beauty standards may help some Black women maintain body satisfaction. However, this cultural acceptance does not shield all Black women from issues like eating disorders. Some develop anorexia, characterized by self-induced weight loss, or bulimia, involving binge eating, followed by purging methods like vomiting or laxative abuse, as noted by O'Neill in 2003. Economic factors can influence the type of eating disorder a Black woman may face. For instance, unlike the fictional contented Mammy, Black women in low-status jobs may experience immense unhappiness, and overeating can become a temporary escape from poverty and emotional deprivation. If obesity is seen as culturally normative for poor Black women, healthcare providers might overlook weight gain and potential eating disorders, leading to delayed treatment. Conversely, upwardly mobile Black women may feel pressured to conform to the dominant standards of thinness, as a Mammy-like appearance might be deemed unattractive and unprofessional. This pressure can lead to excessive dieting as they try to distance themselves from the Mammy image. With this, the challenge is to address obesity and its health impacts without fostering negative body images or unhealthy eating habits. This requires culturally sensitive health programs that address the needs of African American women, while also recognizing and responding to their unmet emotional needs and the cultural pressures tied to the Mammy image. The Jezebel, the Sapphire, the Mammy. These stereotypes emerged from historically constructed conditions and were shaped by systemic inequalities like racism and sexism. They persist today and can impact the psychological well-being of many African American women. As Black feminist scholar Bell Hooks advocated, adopting an oppositional gaze allows us to recognize, interrogate, and challenge these oppressive images, paving the way for transformation. Although these stereotypes have been widely examined in social sciences, they are sometimes dismissed as outdated, replaced by newer stereotypes like the angry Black woman or the welfare queen. However, the older stereotypes still influence contemporary perceptions, albeit less overtly than in the past. Recognizing the ongoing presence of these stereotypes is just the beginning of addressing their harm. There is still a need to advocate for diverse and accurate representations in media and pop culture. This means holding television networks and media producers accountable and choosing to support works that portray Black women with nuance and depth. Shows like Insecure and Us provide the rich, multifaceted portrayals that Black women deserve. Support media that showcases Black women as complex individuals, moving beyond the limiting confines of stereotypes like Jezebel, Sapphire, and Mammy. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for similarly insightful content. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. See you next time.